Hi, this is Rob Campbell, and here is a short version of a talk I made this summer at Arrows, proposing that we make a real system for ground imagery. I see it as a kind of remote sensing system, like Landsat almost, except that the platform, so to speak, is people out there standing on the Earth itself. So I'm calling it Landstand. USGS is obviously very serious about using satellite and aerial imagery for ecosystem monitoring. What I am proposing is that USGS start to get serious about using ground photos as another means to the same end. I got into ground photos as a user when I was researching the history of the Black Hills Forest. Collecting a couple thousand of these made me think about how useful they are, and it also made me wonder why we don't really use these systematically. Ground images really aren't a standard part of the GIS remote sensing toolkit, but they should be. So, what are some of the benefits of ground photos? First, they help people make sense of satellite and aerial imagery. They help people connect it to their reality. They let us communicate in ways that reach out to a broader audience of users and decision makers. Second, ground photos add another layer of scale or resolution. A lot of these old USGS photos, for example, of the rocks also show great detail about the vegetation around them. So if we say that we work at all scales, this is an obvious one for us to think about. Third, ground imagery expands the time span of our archive. Satellites now reach back about 35 years, aerial about 70. Ground photos double that again, reaching back to the mid-1800s. And as a user, my perspective is that this is the last scale of remote sensing, and I want to see whatever data are out there, whether the camera was on a satellite, an airplane, or a tripod. So then what's the problem? First, to get a synoptic view of an area, you need lots of ground photographs because they have small footprints. The good news is that there are lots of them out there, in fact astonishing numbers of them. But problem two is that they're out there in lots of tiny little piles. County museums, professors' file drawers, 100 here, 1,000 there. And just digitizing them does nothing to change that. The third problem is georeferencing. The best way to organize photos is spatially, and almost no one is doing that seriously. Now these three combine, I think, to make it needlessly difficult to use ground photos. So I propose we do something, but a lot of people are out there doing something with photos. Why us? Why USGS? Well, first, most ground photo programs like Google Street View are aimed at making money on urban commerce, not getting out to the forests and the mountains and the deserts. Second, very few organizations have actually served up big volumes of georeference data. There are a lot of thematic text-based websites out there, but even most of those are quite small. Third, archiving. A lot of stuff out there is here today, gone tomorrow, but USGS has been around for the long term. And fourth, people already see USGS as a reliable source for public domain imagery. So here's my proposal. We should build a system that lets people donate ground photos into our public database through the internet. The way I see it, the first step would be standards, deciding on image format, metadata, etc. Then begin with all the ground photos that are actually at Arrows, then photos within USGS, and then other agencies, and ultimately anybody. I think if we build a good system that's easy to use, then lots of people will have incentive to load their images into our server rather than go to the expense of setting up their own. So this isn't us taking their data from them. In fact, under each of their photos would be their logo, their name, a link to their website. And their images would be available still to them on our server for whatever purposes they want. By the way, I think it makes sense for this to include oblique aerial photographs. There are a lot of them out there, and they're sort of a bridge between ground and nadir imagery, but they have odd perspective, and they tend to come in miscellaneous bunches, not in nice straight flight lines. So to me, it makes sense to treat them like ground photos, just like a photo that's taken from the top of a hill. Also, by the way, it's not true that you need a camera with GPS to do things like this. There are lots of easy, quick ways to tag a photo with a Latin long. You have online maps, place name gazetteers, township and range, address systems, maybe even automatic systems like PhotoSynth that can match your photo to other known photos. Once you have a database like this, you open the door to all kinds of activities. We can't even predict them all right now. What I think about is photo from ground photos the way we do from aerial photos, getting those classifications calibrated to the aerial and satellite classifications, and by doing so pushing back our vegetation mapping into the 1800s. But there are lots of other uses. I have talked to scientists doing things that I would never think to associate with ground photos, like carbon studies and tree rings. Ground photos would also be great for painting the sides of all those LiDAR kinds of elevation models. Ground photos could feed into all kinds of modeling of past landscapes. Another application, of course, is rephotography. Rephotography is pairing old photos with new ones taken from the same location. I think it would be great to get a whole lot of school kids outside, reshooting old photos, and adding real data into a real database. And of course tying that in with the math and geography, history and biology and art and everything else they're learning. A lot of those old photos were in stereo, so all kinds of 3D options open up. Last year, I learned that digital cameras actually sense infrared. Think of what you could do with that. Imagine every time we served up a Landsat image, or some other image, we say, hey, we have X number of ground photos in that same area. Would you like to see them? Imagine all the creative uses that people would come up with. And how about poor countries? If satellites and servers are beyond their reach, how about a camera and an internet connection? We should think about an international partner like UNEP. And the thing is, we already have millions of these scenes lying around in drawers. We just have to build a big bucket and get people to start throwing them in. To me, this would be the most exciting new Landcover tool since Landsat 1, and these would be the cheapest data that USGS ever acquired. In many cases, we've already spent a lot of money to take these photos, document them, store them. We just have to go the last step and start using them. Well, if you would like to get an idea of what I've been doing toward this end, you can go right now to whereinthehills.com. Whereinthehills.com. You'll see I set it up almost like geocaching, like a community kind of game. The way it works is that I post a picture, I ask, where in the hills, this is for the Black Hills, where in the hills do you think this is? And when someone proves it by sending in the new photo, we post it. I have not publicized this website because what I've been doing is working out the procedures. What photos you keep, how you associate the photos with each other, how you set them up in series, what versions of the images you keep, metadata, copyright, etc. On this website you can look through a few photos that are all set up already. You can also download every photo in the collection, all the metadata, and in Google Earth you can see all the photos laid out on a map. Every photo is located at least to the nearest place name. And for the few that are found, so to speak, the ones that are rephotographed, you can flip from before to after, and you can go down and see them in perspective. And you can even view the full res in perspective. So take a look. I hope this is something we will do, and thank you for your time.